Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are strapping in for a high-stakes ride right into the geopolitical heart of Latin America. We're looking at the really intense competition for critical minerals.
And this isn't just about, you know, digging stuff out of the ground.
No, not at all. This is about the global energy transition. It's about national sovereignty and really the future of our global supply chains.
That's absolutely right. The source material we're working with paints a really vivid picture of a region sort of caught between two titans, the U.S. and China.
And both are desperate to secure these resources.
Exactly. They're vital for this massive ongoing shift to clean energy.
So our mission for you, the listener, is to move beyond the headlines. We really want to understand how this rivalry, combined with these, well, often surprising national policies in Latin America, is actively reshaping who builds what and where.
And the stakes are just incredibly high because of what's beneath the surface. We're talking about copper, nickel, zinc, and of course lithium. The region's wealth is just immense.
The numbers really back that up, and in a dramatic way. If you just focus on the lithium triangle, that's Argentina, Bolivia, and Chile.
That area holds almost half.
Almost half. 49.6% of the world's global lithium resources. And then for copper, which is, the backbone of all electrification,
Right.
Chile and Peru alone account for over 34% of global production in 2024. The energy transition literally runs on what comes out of these countries.
Okay, but here's where the investment data throws a massive curveball.
It's a strategic one.
Totally. When you look at foreign ownership across the whole sector,
Yeah.
foreign direct investment, you'd assume it's just a U.S. versus China fight.
That's what I thought, but the numbers from 2023 tell a completely different story. Frankly, it's stunning. Canada is the dominant foreign investor.
By a lot.
A whopping 35% of critical mineral mines in the region.
And that is the first big surprise. The U.S. is way behind at 16%, and China's at 9.6%.
So what does that tell us?
It reflects Canada's deep, long-standing history in global mining. They have a kind of political neutrality and a high-risk tolerance for these markets.
So they're the incumbent.
They're the established player, yeah. Often acting as a sort of proxy for capital flowing between the big geopolitical blocks.
So Canada leads in volume, but what's really fascinating is where China is focusing its capital.
Right.
It may be third overall, but if you narrow it down just to lithium, which is the flashpoint mineral right now, China leaps up.
To a leading investor, they hold 24% of those lithium mines, second only to Canada's 42%.
That sounds very deliberate.
Oh, it is. It's targeted investment tied directly to their strategic goals. They're picking high-value assets that plug right into their dominance in EV battery production.
Okay, let's unpack the rivalry itself. Let's look at how these two giants approach the region. You've got China's heavy integrated strategy.
And the U.S. with its regulatory counter-strategy.
Let's start with China.
China's main vehicle, as we know, is the Belt and Road Initiative, the BRI. And this isn't just a simple line of credit. It's an integrated supply chain package.
The whole package.
It combines massive infrastructure support, think roads, ports, power grids, with concessional loans and, really intense diplomacy. By 2022, 20 Latin American countries had joined.
And their key advantage isn't just the BRI goodwill, it's their undisputed dominance in the entire EV supply chain.
That's the crucial piece. It lets their multinational enterprises, or MNEs, integrate the whole process, from mineral extraction upstream to processing midstream and then battery production downstream.
So they offer the host country a comprehensive, we'll build the whole thing for you deal.
You see this perfectly in Bolivia. In 2015, the state secured $7.5 billion in loans from China's Export-Import Bank.
Okay.
And later, after a German deal fell apart, Bolivia partnered with a Chinese consortium to build its lithium extraction plants. That integration mine to manufacturing is a huge draw for countries that want to industrialize.
Right, they don't just want to export raw materials.
Exactly.
So if China's playbook is this massive state-backed integrated offering, the U.S. can't really match that scale of lending, so instead of capital, their response is regulatory.
Yes, they're trying to fundamentally change the market rules for anyone who wants access to North America. The core of this approach rests on two big levers.
The Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA from 2022.
And the later 2025 One Big Beautiful Bill Act, or OBBB. These are designed to rewire global supply chains.
So under the IRA, those clean energy tax credits, the big incentive for EVs in the U.S., are only available for materials from the U.S. or from countries with free trade agreements.
FTAs. Right, so that includes Chile, Peru, and Mexico in Latin America.
But here's the choke point.
The critical choke point. The regulations exclude any sourcing from a foreign entity of concern, or FEOC.
And that FEOC hurdle is the cornerstone of the whole U.S. strategy. Let's make sure we get the magnitude of this. An FEOC is a firm with 25% or more ownership by governments from adversarial countries, like China.
That 25% limit is a hard red line. It's forcing global companies to restructure or divest, and fast.
The compliance headache must be huge.
Oh, imagine you're a major U.S. automaker. If your supplier in Peru has, say, 26% investment from a Chinese state fund, that taints your entire product. You lose the tax credits.
So it forces supply chains to decouple, to choose sides.
It does. And to complement this regulatory stick, the U.S. is using an alliance carrot, the Mineral Security Partnership, or MSP.
Launched in 2022. It started with allies like Canada and Australia, but then they expanded it.
Right, in 2024 with the MSP Forum to bring in resource-rich countries like Argentina, Peru, and Mexico.
But here's the key difference the sources point out. It may be a strategic deficit for the U.S.
A big one. Unlike the BRI's capital-intensive approach, the MSP, well, it lacks direct state-led financing. It's more about technical assistance and standards.
Right, so if the entire U.S. strategy hinges on the MSP and these regulations, but there's no big financing mechanism, aren't they strategically kneecapped against China's multi-billion-dollar BRI loans?
It's a fundamental weakness. It really is. It means the U.S. has to rely on its regulatory demand, the IRA, to sort of compel private companies to align.
So it's less about winning a capital war.
And more about rewriting the rules of access to the world's biggest consumer market. It's a powerful lever, for sure, but it's not the same as a massive upfront check.
Which brings us down to the ground. How does this high-level capital versus regulation rivalry actually translate for companies trying to invest?
Well, policies like the IRA are actively and I'd say aggressively shaping M&E behavior. If a company wants to target the U.S. clean energy market, it has to de-risk its supply chains.
They have to prove they are FEOC compliant.
They must. And we have a textbook case study here with Lithium Americas, a Canadian company. This is where that regulatory pain point becomes a real corporate drama.
They split the company in two.
They literally split the company into two separate entities.
Just because of U.S. rules.
Think about that. A corporate divorce dictated by Washington's regulations. One entity focuses only on North America with no direct Chinese stake, so it's IRA compliant.
And the other?
The other focuses on Argentina, where China's Ganfeng still has significant ownership. They are redrawing their corporate maps just to chase a tax credit.
That strategy being dictated entirely by regulation, not just the market. But the data here gets a little nuanced, right? The collaboration trends are shifting, but maybe not breaking completely.
That's right. If you look at joint ventures, Canadian-U.S. partnerships have, naturally grown since 2020. They're chasing that compliant supply chain.
Makes sense.
But Canadian-China joint ownership, it plateaued after 2018, but it stayed remarkably stable.
So what does that suggest?
It suggests that the trend is a reduced tendency for U.S. and allied MNEs to start new projects with Chinese firms, especially if the product is headed for the U.S. market.
But the source notes something interesting. Existing partnerships are generally maintained unless they are legally forced to stop.
Exactly. It's expensive and it's complicated to unwind a joint venture. Commercial contracts are sticky.
So despite all this geopolitical pressure to decouple,
economic fundamentals and commercial realities still matter. If a facility's built, it's running, it's selling products somewhere else in the world, the cost of breaking that up often outweighs the political pressure. It's decoupling by attrition, not by some immediate dramatic break.
Which brings us to a really important point. How are the Latin American host countries navigating this? They're not just passive bystanders.
No, not at all. They are adopting very specific and often conflicting national strategies. They are actively using this rivalry to their advantage.
Okay, let's start with the resource nationalism camp.
Chile in 2023 launched its national lithium strategy. This was a monumental shift toward expanding state control.
They created a state-owned national lithium company.
And they forced a restructuring of the big Codelco SQM joint venture to give the state a majority control.
That move is huge. It seems to relegate China's Tianqi, which has a big stake in SQM, to more of a passive financial role.
It does, but what's fascinating is that Chile is still doing this deliberate balancing act. While they're strengthening state control and aligning with the U.S. through their FTA, Chile's president is also actively courting Chinese investment.
So playing both sides.
He's meeting with firms like Tsingshan Group to talk about building battery manufacturing inside Chile. But that balance is precarious.
How so?
The sources note that even projects tied to that kind of diplomatic goodwill-like projects with Chinese firms BYD and Tsingshan were paused by 2025.
And why was that?
Falling lithium prices and, local bureaucratic delays. It just shows the limits of diplomacy when the economic shift and regulatory hurdles pop up.
Okay, what about Bolivia?
Bolivia is maybe the clearest example of a state-led industrialization strategy. They created Yacimientos de Litio Bolivianos, or YLB, to oversee the whole value chain.
And in 2023, they partnered with a Chinese consortium, CBC.
Right, to build plants using direct lithium extraction, or DLE technology.
And DLE is important here. Why, exactly?
Because it's a newer, riskier, and less proven method than the old evaporation ponds. But it fits Bolivia's goal of sovereignty. They want the minerals without that huge environmental footprint.
And because of the technical risk and the massive capital needed, they had to rely on the Chinese.
They really did, especially after previous European deals failed. However, even in this state-aligned, China-heavy partnership, there was a crucial setback.
Which was?
A YLB-CBC project was recently suspended, pending more environmental review and community consultation.
That perfectly illustrates a fundamental truth in Latin America, doesn't it?
It really does. The BRI might open the door at the government-to-government level, but local stakeholder support is the ultimate gatekeeper.
You ignore indigenous groups or fail environmental standards, and your multi-billion-dollar project can just die.
Faster than any geopolitical rivalry could kill it.
So, on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, we have the open market policies.
Argentina and Peru. Argentina especially has this deregulated open market model with streamlined federal rules. It's made it the top regional destination for FDI in lithium.
And they're running a pretty complex dual-track strategy.
Incredibly complex. You have strong provincial governments with deep vital ties to Chinese firms who are funding the mines and the jobs, and that coexists, sometimes awkwardly, with a pro-U.S. federal administration promoting alignment with the U.S. and its allies.
So they want capital from everywhere.
And they're willing to manage the political friction that comes with it. Peru is similar. It maintains open market regulations, attracting investment from the U.S., Canada, and China.
And Chinese investment has risen there, too.
Sharply, especially since their 2009 FTA with China. And that includes big infrastructure projects that help China's logistics, like the massive China-financed Shanxi port. They're making sure they can ship the minerals out efficiently.
Okay, this has been an incredible deep dive into the policies, the players, the friction. So for you, the listener, how should you synthesize all this? What are the key takeaways?
I think we can draw 4 crucial strategic lessons from the sources. First one, value creation is crucial.
Okay.
Foreign MNEs have to align with what the host countries are demanding, and that's value-added activities. It's no longer enough just to dig a hole and ship ore.
They have processing, battery production, tech transfer.
All of it. Workforce development. If you don't offer value beyond just extraction, your project is vulnerable.
Got it. What's number 2?
The second insight is about geopolitics. Geopolitical neutrality, but with a glaring exception.
An exception.
Most Latin American nations are trying to stay neutral to maximize the capital they can attract from all corners. MNEs should generally do the same, unless
you are specifically serving the U.S. market.
Exactly. Then limiting collaboration with Chinese firms becomes essential for compliance with the IRA and OBBB rules. That is the great trade-off.
Okay, so a third insight.
Number 3 focuses on China's operational challenges. Stakeholder engagement trumps policy. For Chinese MNEs, the BRI just opens the diplomatic door at the presidential palace.
It gets you in the room.
It gets you in the room. But long-term success requires effective negotiation with the actual host governments and constructive engagement with non-government stakeholders.
Environmental and indigenous groups, specifically.
Yes. The Bolivian example is a perfect illustration. State backing isn't enough if you don't have local consent.
And the final insight, number 4.
Differentiation and collaboration. The major players aren't all the same. U.S. and allied MNEs should differentiate themselves through strong ESG performance and by leveraging those MSP alliances.
Okay.
Chinese firms, on the other hand, leverage their unrivaled strengths in the downstream EV supply chain. And the complementary nature of those strengths is critical.
So even with the rivalry?
Even with the rivalry, economic fundamentals often still rule. These complementary capabilities mean that selective collaboration like co-locating facilities or quiet partnerships may still be commercially justified.
So to summarize the core tension here, This critical mineral gold rush is shaped by three interlocking forces. You have U.S. regulatory compliance, demanding these clean supply chains. You have China's diplomatic and capital leverage, offering integrated development.
And then you have the sovereign decisions of Latin American nations who are actively, and I'd say brilliantly, using this rivalry to demand more value for themselves.
Exactly.
And that leads us to our final thought for you to consider. The source material notes that despite all this talk of decoupling, countries like Chile and Argentina are continuing to deepen their ties with China, even while they have these lucrative free trade agreements with the U.S.
Which raises a big question.
A really important question. In the long run, will it be economic fundamentals and local value demands which favor the quickest source of capital and tech, or will it be geopolitical alignment favoring regulatory compliance that ultimately dictates the flow of critical mineral investment in Latin America?
Something to think about. That tension between the need for capital and strategic necessity.